Hey guys, I am Pixel Dan, and today we are going to be taking a look at the new Star Wars HyperReal Darth Vader action figure from Hasbro. Now it is worth pointing out that Hasbro did provide this figure for the purposes of this review that I'm doing today, or this preview for you guys. So I wanted to make sure that was out there and fully disclosed. Hasbro revealed this back at Toy Fair, and it's a really interesting idea. Basically, this is their new market of collector action figures, more on the high-end collectible type stuff. But the thing I find so weird about this is that it's in an 8-inch scale. Which is a size that is so different from everything else. I mean, you have like the 6 to 7 inch scale kind of together, and then you move up to like the 12-inch stuff like Hot Toys and everything. So 8 inches doesn't really fit in with anything else. It's very much kind of in its own style, its own camp, and it doesn't really fit in with a lot of collections. So this is going to have to be something that's really strong, I think, in order to get collectors to want to buy in at a completely different scale that doesn't fit in with anything else. So let's go ahead and take a look at the box, and then we'll open it up and get a good look at the figure inside. So it does come in a very unique shaped box, you can see, and it's a really nice box. Great images here on the front. It's got this nice gloss on the images of the figure. There is a window on the side. It's a bit dusty, but this is the way it came out of the shipping box. So you can kind of see Vader like looking over here to the side. The back shows you, this is the actual figure right here in a pose. So it's kind of telling you that it's highly detailed, good character likeness, premium textiles, I guess for the quality of the cloak and everything. And it has a metallic endoskeleton, which is really interesting. So all the articulation is inside the figure on an endoskeleton. And that way it's going to have kind of like a softer rubbery feel to it, I think. So you can see it's got a nice Velcro flap on there that opens up. We can see all of the interchangeable hands over here. There's also an effect piece down there. And then the window showcases the figure within, and you can see his base back behind there. We've also got a couple more images on the box showing the different posing options. So let me go ahead and get this guy pulled out of the box, and then we'll come back and get a closer look at the figure itself. All right, here we go. We've got our HyperReal Vader outside of the box, and I'm gonna go ahead and bring in the tape measure so that you can see that this figure stands almost all the way up to 9 inches tall. He's about the 8.5-inch mark there. So before we go any further, why don't we do a little bit of comparison time specifically for scale. I'm bringing in a Black Series 6-inch Darth Vader. Yes, I know it's the one that's being electrocuted, but this is just for scale purposes. I wanted to stand these two side by side so you can see just how big the HyperReal figures are in comparison to the 6-inch retail Star Wars Black Series lineup. He is quite a bit bigger, just all around, height-wise, the overall stature of him, much bigger than the 6-inch figures. So that does bring me back to what I said when we were talking at the beginning. It's an interesting scale because it doesn't really fit in with anything else. So this thing really has to stand out as something special because it's a unique scale, but also because of the price point. This is a $79.99 figure, so we're looking at an $80 action figure here. It's very comparable. I think the best thing I can compare it to, since they're considering this like an adult collector toy at the $80 price point, I think about Mezco's 112 collective line. Now those are more in the 6 to 7 inch scale, so they're even a bit smaller than this, but that seems to be the thing that we can compare this to the most if we're talking comparison's sake. So let's really get into it and take a close look at the overall figure. Now, we'll start with the design, just the overall look of it, because I will say it looks pretty nice. He's definitely based on Empire Strikes Back Vader, I believe. The reason I specifically say that is because I know that the next figure in the line is Bespin Luke, and he goes with this figure. In fact, this Vader comes with a Bespin base, so, it makes total sense for this to be our Empire Strikes Back version. The helmet there does really have a nice gloss to it. I like the way that my lights are shining off of it, actually, because there's a nice gloss on the eye specifically. It does almost look like there's a bit of a silver mixed in with the mask color, like almost like a gunmetal or something. It's just something that makes it look a little different than the deep black of the helmet. So it's got a really nice shine to it overall, but it looks really neat. I do really like the overall look there. As we're coming down on the figure there, we can see he's got the control box. It's got some various colors on there, the whites and the reds and the blues. You can see the little control boxes on the belt there as well. He does have a cloth cape and then the cloth robe piece. You can see the cloth robe kind of covering the torso, and then of course coming down below the belt there. I'll kind of lift the cape to like show it to you. I do not believe any of this is meant to be removed. It does not seem like it. He does have plastic shoulder pads, which are attached to the piece sitting over his torso there, where you can see kind of the black bodysuit underneath that acts as his robe. And then that comes down to the nice shiny glossy black scene on the boots, and of course the suit underneath is more flat. Now that's because the body here is definitely made of that very soft, spongy, squishy material. I don't really know the best way to explain it, but he's got a metal endoskeleton, which is where all the articulation is. So because of that, the figure is mostly made of this very stretchy, soft plastic. And we'll go ahead and get into that a little bit more as we're talking about the articulation. I do want to talk about this cape a little bit here. So let me zoom out a little bit so you guys can get a better look at the size of this cape. So we'll kind of stretch it out here. You can kind of see through it with my lights there. It's really not that thick of a fabric. In fact, it doesn't feel too much different than the cape that's on the Black Series Vader over here. It feels very similar. It looks very similar. And one thing I will say about it is it's not weighted. In fact, it's not weighted as much as I would like it to be, especially at the robe. If we look at the robe, do you see the way it's kind of sitting a little funny? Like, you really do have to kind of tuck it down to keep it from bunching up and everything. Capes are a very tricky thing on action figures when you're using fabric-like materials. And on these higher-end figures, like these $80 price point figures, I prefer to see the capes to be made of a thicker, heavier material so that they lay more proper than this seems to be doing. You can kind of see the way it's sitting up over his shoulders there. It's really just not weighted enough, I don't think. The little chain right here is also made of plastic. It's like a very light plastic. So that probably would have been cool if it was metal. So yeah, I would have liked to see the cape made of a thicker, heavier material so that it hangs a little bit better. Now you can kind of tuck it around, and honestly, since the material here is made of that softer type rubbery plastic, it's a little sticky. And the cape does tend to stick to it. It's really strange. Like, look at that. I can actually kind of cling it to the side of the figure. So that could come in handy for some of your poses. But yeah, there's no wire in here either. I know some people were wondering if there was like a wire in there so that you could pose the cape too. So yeah, there's nothing like that. No wire in the cape. Really not a lot of weight to it. It's very light. So I kind of wish that that was just a little bit nicer than it actually is. Okay, let's really talk about articulation on this guy now, because I want to see how exactly this endoskeleton works here. So the head, first of all, the head just looks left and right. It does look like it, oh, there we go. We can bend it forwards and backwards. Oh, yeah, real tight joints on this thing. Now that's one thing that's a common thread throughout the entire thing, is that the joints on the endoskeleton are very tight. Now the head actually moves left and right pretty loosely there, but moving forwards and backwards, because it's like at the neck, the base of the neck, that is a really, really tight joint there. The helmet's not removable. There's no head sculpt underneath the helmet there. This does look like it is attached. I don't think I can take that off, or at least I don't think I'm supposed to. Okay, here we go. So the arms can bend outwards there. Decent range of motion there. Forwards and backwards is okay. And then we're gonna bend the arm there. Yeah, there we go. So that's how much the elbow bends. So that's one thing too about an endoskeleton. It is going to be a little prohibitive of your articulation. Like you can see, he's not getting real big bends in the elbows. You know, if I'm comparing this to like the double joints on an elbow on a Marvel Legends figure, obviously it's not going to bend that much. Like one of the things I tried to do when I was posing this guy around was get a really nice like classic Vader pose with him kind of holding on to his belt, and I can't really quite get the arms bent up in that position for that. So that's worth noting on that. It looks like the torso can kind of just rock and roll around there. In fact, I feel I just totally detached it. Look at that. Well, that's interesting. So that's probably by design, but you can see the metal ball joint there. So I just kind of popped that right out of socket. So let me see if we can easily get that pop back in. Yeah, it just clicked back in place. So there you go. That's really cool. I didn't even do that while I was posing him around. So it's kind of nice to know that can happen. All right, so the legs can come out this far. It does seem like it's stretching the plastic there a little bit. Kind of move that cape so you can get a better light on there. Yeah, so legs go outwards, forwards, backwards. We can kind of swivel them, but again, it's like it's different than like in an action figure where you can just grip the articulation and swivel the hips or anything, because you just have this very flexible plastic there. The knees have a pretty good range on there. You can see that there's a little bit of resistance, like that stretchy material kind of pushes the leg back. See how it's like bouncing there? And then the ankles look like they move forwards and backwards. They don't really rock side to side. It doesn't look like I'm kind of swivel there. So the endoskeleton, the positives is that it's real tight. The joints are very tight. He does hold poses pretty well. He balances well. He's got a lot of weight to him because of that. And I can stand him in several different poses here. But the downside is that the articulation does appear to be limited by that stretchier skin material that they're using. The other thing I am very concerned about, and I'm thinking long-term on this, long-term, figures that are usually made of this rubbery type material have a tendency to deteriorate over time. The plastic breaks down, they kind of rip, they get really sticky. I know this from experience because the early 2000s, there were a lot of figures that used this material. A lot from Hasbro, actually, because I'm thinking of like the early 2000s Spider-Man figures and stuff like that had some of this rubbery material, and those things have like fallen apart by this point. So I don't know if that's going to happen with this, but it's definitely something to consider for long term down the line, what might happen to it. All right, so this guy comes with a ton of interchangeable hands. So you can see right now he's kind of got just like these loose, regular gripping hands is what I've got on him here. But he's got a couple of pointing fingers. He's got like the nice open palm, the I am your father, join me, dark side kind of hand, which is cool. He's got this hand where he's deflecting the blaster shot from Cloud City there, yeah, from the conference room. We've got a nice closed fist for both hands, and then like we've got the force chokeout hand. So there's some different options that you've got there, and let me just show you real quick. To change it, it works like the torso I just showed you basically. You just give a nice firm tug, you'll pop the hand off, it reveals the metal ball joint there, and then in its place, you can swap in a new hand. You have to give a real good push because you want it to click in, and that's real easy to swap those hands out. So that way you can get a couple different poses with some of the other different accessories there. As far as the accessories go, we've got the lightsaber, and my lightsaber came out of the box warped. I don't know if you see that. It's bent a little bit. I've already been kind of bending it around. It's very soft plastic, really kind of bends around. You can detach the blade from it as well. So he does get a good grip on it. You can also get two-handed holding, so he can bend his elbows enough to hold the lightsaber with two hands, which is really good. And yeah, I showed you can remove the blade if you want, because he does have a hook over here on the side. And let me kind of come in, let me make sure you can actually see it. It's a small little plastic hook. The hook is very soft and very gummy. I mean, look at the way this thing flexes and bends around. So, but you got the little ring there on the lightsaber, and you can hang it on there. You can see because of the way it's really bendy, it just lightly hangs there. It's not a really tight grip, but you can hang the saber from his belt for different poses. All right, so the other accessory is a really interesting one, and I'm gonna bring him to this pose here where he's got the open palm. Like I mentioned, this is kind of like the deflecting the blaster shot, you know, iconic scene from Vader where Han shoots at him. But he comes with this interesting blast effect here, which is like this light blue translucent burst, basically. And it's got a peg on there, and you'll notice that that one hand has a peg hole in it so that you can plug this in. Now, I guess that's supposed to be him deflecting the blaster shot. Or maybe it's him just, I don't know, doing a force push? Maybe it's a force push? I don't know. Obviously, we didn't see anything like that in the film, so it's not accurate. It's just a more dramatic kind of effect. So if you want to pose Vader with this very dramatic force effect, you've got the option to do that too. All right, so I did briefly mention the stand that he comes with, so let's bring that back in real quick so I can show that to you. It's just kind of like a light plastic grate piece that's supposed to be like the floor on Bespin. You'll notice that there are 5 peg holes, or actually 4 peg holes, sorry, 1 on the bottom, 3 in the center. And if you flip it over to the bottom, you do have these 3 little pegs right there. Also this little connector piece. Now this, I believe, is gonna be so that you can connect this base with the Bespin Luke base when Bespin Luke comes out. But what you could do is you can actually pull these little pegs off the bottom here. They're in there really tight. Whew, okay, got it. Wow, that was very hard to get out. So basically, you can then take these pegs, you can put them anywhere you want to on one of these slots. He's got the peg holes on his feet, so we can fasten that in there. You can actually see it clips really good. I mean, it's a real nice tight lock on there. And that way you've got a base that you can pose your Vader on if you want to do that. So there you go, my friends. That is a look at the new HyperReal Darth Vader action figure from Hasbro. Once again, I do have to give a very special thanks to Hasbro because they did send this over and provide it for the purposes of this video. This figure does retail for $80 as mentioned. It's the 8-inch scale. So honestly, it's got a lot going against it. I'm just thinking collector mindset. I feel like it's going to be hard to convince people that they need a Vader like this in their collection when it's got that sort of stuff going against it. Like I said, it really needed to stand out on its own and really wow people. My concerns mostly lie in the material that it's made out of. Just from past experience, I don't know if I really trust this stretchy kind of rubbery plastic to hold up over time. I'm concerned about that, really I am. He looks neat. He's a very cool looking figure, but really it's going to be up to you guys if this is something that you think that you want to add to your collection, which is always the case, right? So I believe the pre-orders for this guy are already sold out on Hasbro Pulse, but pre-orders are up for him on lots of retailers like Big Bad Toy Store and Amazon and Entertainment Earth and GameStop, and he ships this month. Like I think he's hitting, if he's not already hitting right now, he's going to be hitting very, very soon. So happy hunting, my friends. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me for this video. Please leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of this. Let me know if you agree with me or you disagree with me. Either way is totally fine. Let's just talk about it. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button for more content just like this. Until next time, guys.